All right, we are live. Oops, let's see. Hold on a second. We're going to go live. There we go. All right, we are live with the one and only Dom Delfino, the Dom father himself. I am so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here with you, Sabrina. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. I got to tell you, we have a ton of questions that came in for your live session. There's a lot of people who have some questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm always ready, Sabrina.
You know what? Yeah, you are. You are always ready. You're born ready. You know, one of my favorite things about you is you are so fun. You are so real. And I don't think you're really afraid of much. You know, maybe that's where you get the name or the nickname, the Dom Father. I know your kids gave it to you. You know, but you've also led some really amazing teams across the industry. And, you know, you came to Pure Storage at a very pivotal time and hit some record-breaking quarters and fiscal years based on your leadership. You've worked for some of the biggest tech giants, you know, across the board. So I'm interested, for those folks who don't know you, maybe give us a little bit of background, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so, you know, Sabrina, I've pretty much done nothing but this since I came out of college. I went to school thinking, you know, as a teenage boy, being fascinated with cars, with Mustangs and Corvettes and Camaros and Ferraris, that I was going to design cars, right? And I think I got a little rude awakening when I came out of school about what that really meant. And it's a good thing, you know, you took a lot of electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, computer science classes, and came out of school, went right into corporate IT as a SCO Unix administrator and as a network analyst. And you know, interesting to sit on the customer side and understand what things mean from their perspective. I then went to a channel partner who was ultimately acquired by Dimension Data, spent about 5 years there, 14 years at Cisco Systems, you know, 6.5 years at VMware, and now the last year at Pure. And it's given me interesting perspective and tremendous opportunities to work with, you know, some of the brightest people in the industry and, you know, many of the brightest people in Silicon Valley. Spent the majority of my career as an engineer, starting as a post-sales engineer and then a pre-sales engineer and then pre-sales engineering leadership, and then ultimately in sales leadership. And it's been an exciting ride along the way. I've seen multiple technology transformations along the way, multiple business transformations along the way, multiple crises, macro crises along the way. You know, we talk about the dot-com bust and 9/11 and the mortgage crisis, and now the pandemic that we're, you know, hopefully navigating our way through now. And I think you take a lot of learnings from those things, and you, it's sort of actually the more you go through, I think the more it actually settles you down over time, and you understand how to deal with these things a little bit more pragmatically than if you hadn't experienced them before as well. So excited to be here with you today, and happy to take as many questions as we can.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, you talk about all of these different shifts and monumental moments in IT and just the world. You know, one of the things we were going to talk today about is recurring revenue, because there's this sort of shift in the industry and expectations from a customer's perspective, you know, but I want to understand, if you see one, is there any kind of overlap in, you know, how you successfully get through these shifts, or how you come up on top, you know, during all these different kinds of, you know, major moments in history? Do you see any kind of overlap?
Yeah, and I do. And I think, you know, in the technology world, we're really good at the hype cycle, right? As an industry, right? When something new comes out that is groundbreaking, right? And everything is going to go there, right? And you know, you sort of saw this in networking with open networking, and you know, you kind of heard it with cloud, right? Everything's going to go to the cloud, right? And you know, everything always and never are words that you probably shouldn't have. But I think what you are seeing now is a strategy of multi-cloud and hybrid cloud is the strategy of most enterprise customers moving forward today. And that encompasses private clouds as well. Mm-hmm. And what you're seeing is initially people went to the cloud not necessarily because it was cheaper, but it was faster and easier, right? Because it was a more modern architecture for application development and infrastructure as a service than legacy private data centers had been. And now that many of the IT shops have transformed their private data centers to deliver infrastructure as a service and platform as a service and container as a service, you see customers having a choice of what they deploy. And what you also see is the ability for providers in the industry, vendors in the industry, manufacturers in the industry to deliver the cloud economics and cloud consumption model across those clouds, whether they be within the big players like AWS and GCP and Azure, or in the private clouds as well. So, it's been a very interesting transformation in terms of how customers want to consume, how they want to pay, how they want to be metered and measured. And it's also extremely valuable from a business perspective to have a recurring revenue model, because it's a much more predictable business than starting from zero every year and having to sell your entire plan from scratch again. So I think we're still pretty early actually in this transformation. Not everybody's made that transition, and quite honestly, the bigger you are and the more of a perpetual or CapEx revenue stream you have, the more difficult this transformation is for you. So if you take a look at sort of the company who was maybe the flagship case study in the transformation from perpetual software to as a service software, would be Adobe, who did it a long time ago at this point and did it extremely well. And as you navigate that transition, there's some short-term pain that you have to be able to get through in order to make that transformation successfully. So it's one of those things where you really just got to be prepared for it. And it requires a transformation. It's not just a sales transformation. It's an engineering transformation. It's a systems and IT transformation, right? We got to think about, how do I deal with, billing on an ongoing basis, and metering and utilization and capacity planning, and the type of infrastructure that I'm now operating on behalf of the customer, and how I deal with maintenance and migrations and software updates and that infrastructure without impacting the customers as well. So it's really a company-wide transformation that needs to take place. But it is the direction that clients want to go. They want that cloud-like economic model and that cloud-like consumption model, no matter what cloud they choose to be in or how many clouds they choose to be in, including their private cloud infrastructure in their own private data centers.
So you hit on a couple things that, you almost pushed back for me, and I appreciate that, because we talk about, why this makes sense as a business model, and, why this makes the consumer experience so much better, and why there's this demand. But it's freaking hard. Let's call it like it is. It's no small feat to move an entire boat. I mean, to make this giant shift. And I think that's part of the reason why we had such interest in your live, and why people are so interested in what you have to say, because you've done a lot of things right. And I think we want to know why. How did you do that? You talk about being prepared. How does Dom Delfino prepare for something like this? How do you work, and manage at the C level as a CRO? How do you manage your team, from the top down? How do you kind of build that culture within your own team, and then sort of, outside of that, the layers around that to impact that kind of a growth?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sabrina. And I think the first thing that you need to realize as a leader is you can't have an ego, right? That's for the politicians, not for the business leaders, right? Once you become a leader, it is no longer about you. It's about your team, right? And, it's a great way to measure leaders is by the effectiveness and quality of their teams and their organizations as a whole. So I think, you got to check your ego at the door. As you run bigger and bigger, larger scale businesses, you really have to understand how to prioritize, right? Not only your own time, but your team's time. And you've got to set an agenda that we have to win or lose as a team, right? There's no I, it's all we, us. It's not about you anymore. It's about the success of your team, and those results will reflect on you personally as a leader. So, understanding what an organization's priorities are, how you're going to measure them, how are you going to align your team's incentives and compensation plans and bonus and commissions to driving those priorities, right? And, as a sales leader, Priority number one is not making your number. Making your number is a duty. That's not a priority, right? So, and then we talk about what are the underlying priorities of the business and how do we align the team's goals and objectives to those priorities and to achieving them. And having an understanding of your customers' priorities is critical in that, right? So what am I trying, if I had to tell my team in one sentence what your job is your job is to help your customers solve their customers' problems, right? That's how you create value, right? I'm not here to just sell you something and how much do you need and what performance do you need it at. It's how am I going to help you solve a problem? That's how you create value in a trusted advisor relationship with a customer in that scenario. It's not just about, sell them something, move on, and then hope they call you back in a couple of months or years when they need more of it. So really being clear, and I've had the luxury of having some fantastic leaders in my many years of work at the different companies I've worked at. And I had one of my old bosses used to tell me, sometimes, Dom, it's not what you say, it's how many times you say it. Making sure that people understand and you're very clear about what those priorities are, what needs to be done in order to accomplish them, how you're going to measure them, and how you're going to hold them accountable, right? And it's like, if you can't measure it, it's probably not worth doing, right? And you got to make sure that people understand that, in sales, by the way, it's the easiest thing to hold accountable. Every 90 days, we produce 90 different metrics about the status of the business, right? I remember going from engineering to sales and saying, I now have the most binary job in the company because everything you do shows up on a sheet of paper or in a deck every 90 days. So, and I think when, especially in today's day and age with the great resignation or whatever the media is calling it today, and there is tremendous opportunity for talent, great talent in this market, right? You have to realize that if you're in the software business or you're in the technology business, you're in the people business. It's about the people who develop the products. It's the people who support the products. It's the people who sell the products, and it's the people who support those people, right? And those people have choice. So if you can't be an authentic leader, and if you can't build relationships with your team, and they don't respect you and they don't trust you, you're probably not going to be very successful as a leader.
Yeah, I agree. And you hit on something and it just makes me smile because I know you, and a lot of people don't know, but you've been a mentor of mine and you've taken my calls when I go, Dom, how do I fix this problem? I've done it again. What do I do now? And I love when you say, it's not always what you say, but how many times you say it, because you have these axioms that sit with me. But you also do this amazing job of incentivizing your team in very unique ways, which I personally have learned from. In fact, I just gave my entire organization a paid day off as sort of we appreciate you. And we repurposed it as an appreciation day because of your guidance. So I want to hit on two things there. So we'll start with one and then we'll move over to the other. One, talk to us a little bit about, ways to incentivize a team. What are some actionable things that you do that you're noticing driving better, culture, better alliances, clearer expectations about what's important to the business and what you expect of your team and your leaders? Are there things that you do that, folks listening can practice and take into action themselves?
I think incentives take many forms and shapes, right? They could be everything from recognition and gratitude, and as simple as picking up the phone and calling somebody and say, hey, Sabrina, I know how hard you worked on this, and I appreciate the effort and the dedication that you put in to achieving this great job. Thank you so much, right? Something as small as that, and obviously there's monetary and sales contests and awards and public recognition that you can do. So you have to figure out what suits the individual and the accomplishment at the right time, or the behavior that you're trying to drive, and then align that incentive or that recognition or that compensation in order to recognize those achievements when they do happen. You talked about a great example, giving people a day off, right? And we're all familiar with the term PTO in this industry, right? Paid time off, right? And sometimes I think it stands for pretend time off, because people are taking vacation and they're actually working. Right. And sometimes, that's something of their own initiative. Sometimes that's something of the company's force, right? It's hey, Sabrina, I know you're on PTO next week, but can you just join this one Zoom meeting, or can you just get this one presentation or this one spreadsheet done? That's actually highly disrespectful to those people, right? And especially during the pandemic we live in, I think we need to recognize as business leaders and as companies across the world right now, a lot of the success and achievement we've had in business is attributed to the fact that employees are simply working harder than they ever have before, right?
Yeah.
So we've, at Pure, we've done Pure Play days. I know VMware's done what they call Epic days, right? You and I have talked about it as well.
Right.
When you're on PTO, you need to be on PTO. So I've got a rule with my team. If you call me, text me, or email me while you're on PTO, it's a $100 fine, right? And if you call or text me or email me while I'm on PTO and it's not an emergency, it's a $1,000 fine, right? And I think, we all work really, really hard. The world is flat. It's a 24/7 environment. And, there does come a point where even myself, I start to get a little crispy, right? I start to get a little burnt out, and I know I need to take time to spend with my family, or doing the things that I love to do in my personal life, or just attending to my own personal obligations. My oil needs to get changed in my car, and my taxes need to get paid just like everybody else. So we need to be really respectful of people. And, work-life balance has become more work-life harmony and work-life integration.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to make sure that we recognize the fact that people have been grinding it for the last 18 months here. And we need to, they need to be open with their leadership about, hey, I'm kind of burning out. I really need a break, or I really need your help with my work-life harmony or balance or integration. And we need to be respectful of those people and make sure that when we give them personal time, that they're truly getting personal time, and we're not, oh, well, Sabrina's not at work today, so I guess we're not going to get this done,
Right.
and make it that type of thing. Does that answer your question, Sabrina?
It does. And you gave a perfect example of, you're fining for $100, and you do these fun competitions.
And I mean, it's a joke. I don't actually collect money from them, but I do threaten it.
But it's funny. And I think that's part of your leadership. You do things where you have, competitions, or you incentivize them off of your own dime, or your own time. And I think that you talked earlier about building trust and respect. And I think when people from your team and on the outside can see that this is personal, this is important to you, they really appreciate that,
So that's a really important, and maybe the most important part of being a leader, Sabrina, is, people are going to respect you for a variety of reasons, right? Your track record, you're in a position of authority, you have a lot of influence over their career, their future opportunity, their compensation, their remuneration. So, and they're going to go a certain amount for you if they respect you. But if they trust you, and trust is not implicitly granted, right? It's trust is earned, right? If they trust you, they're going to go much further for you, right? So what builds trust? Honesty, integrity, candidness, having the ability to relate to people, right? So Sabrina, if you work for me and it's a Monday morning and we've got our standing conference call, and we hop on the Zoom and it's hey, Sabrina, how was your weekend? Okay, great. Let's talk about this project we need to get done. I didn't really care about how your weekend was. I was just asking you because I'm obligated to ask you, right? To put some human element in our work relationship. So people start to pick up on those things and realize, my boss doesn't really care about how my weekend was or how I'm feeling or what's going on in my life. All he really wanted to get to was what's the status of the current project, right? So it's really important. And, that doesn't mean we need to go swimming in my pool every Sunday and have all the kids over for a barbecue. But you got to relate to people personally, and you got to be able to get to know them, and you got to understand what motivates them, and what challenges they're facing, what opportunities they're facing, and how you can help them and contribute to them in a way, whether that be moral support, whether that be business guidance, whether that be a variety of different ways to do that. If you can't earn the trust of your team, and you got to do that, like I said, it's about honesty, it's about integrity, it's about having a high say-do ratio, right? You don't talk up a big game and never deliver on it. It's really critical to to building a successful team and having strong bonds and strong relationships with your colleagues and the colleagues, whether they work for you or they're your peers or they're above you, they're all your colleagues.
Right. And the other thing is, and even just in this conversation, I'm realizing it's the details matter. So one thing that you taught me is instead of giving, a department or, a certain group of people the day off, give the entire company the day off so that everyone's off of email. And, you even went a step further and said, if I see an email come for you, from you, it's going to be $100. And, really showing that you care, putting your money where your mouth is, but also making it fun and building a community. And I've noticed that those are the traits that you have, that you have this, I don't know if it's innate, it's certainly intentional attention to detail, because it's important to you that the people that you're working with have time to recuperate, are looking at the numbers, understand clear expectations, are able, to be solid team members. And so you really, to your point earlier, you're looking holistically and saying, okay, these are the teams that I want to lead. What am I doing to enable that? And as a behavioralist, my background's in behavioral analysis, I couldn't be happier, because you're really helping shape that behavior, and that's making the impact on the organization. But here comes
and I think it's,
oh no,
some of it is also, inspect what you expect. Right.
Okay.
So, if I ask you to do something, Sabrina, and it doesn't happen, and I never ask you about it, it's probably just never going to happen. Right. But if you show up on a Monday staff meeting and I say, hey, Sabrina, what's going on with product Y? Right. And you say, hey, gee, Dom, I don't know. Right. And then the next Monday you show up at a staff meeting and I say, hey, Sabrina, what's going on with product Y? And you say, gee, I don't know. Do you think by the next Monday you're going to start to think, hey, Dom's going to ask me what's going on with product Y, and I'm probably not going to look too bright if I tell him I don't know 3 weeks in a row, right? So I think it's, part of your business management process needs to be, what are the metrics? What are the measurements? How are you driving them? How are you inspecting them? How are you holding the people accountable with them? Are they succeeding or are they failing? Why are they succeeding? How do you replicate those best practices? Are they failing? What are the obstacles to them succeeding? How do you go help your team knock down those obstacles? So, and I say this all the time. I'm not smarter than anybody else. I've just made the mistakes before, right? So, you learn from things that you've done and have failed in the past, and you learn from things that you've done and you've succeeded in the past, right? And then, in retrospect, you look at, well, why did that fail? What did I do wrong? What could I have done differently? What could I have done better? Did you ask for feedback? Did you ask that question? I remember when I was a pre-sales engineer working at a partner, and every sales call I walked out of, I would turn around to the account executive and I would say, how do you think that went? What could I have done better? What could I have done differently? What did I do that didn't go right? Right. And it was, that peer feedback, right? I didn't work for that account executive. I worked for a manager, but I asked them, and I took something from every single conversation that I had about, okay, maybe I need to tweak and tune this. And, you don't go through this overnight transformation, right? You sort of tweak and tune your way along the way. And, you learn a lot from those mistakes you made in the past, and you try not to replicate them in the future.
And you're honest about them. I think a lot of times we try to hide them, cover them up. We're insecure, so we don't ask questions. That's one of the best things that I've appreciated about this, is that I can go, Dom, I have no idea how to solve this. What do you think?
Biggest problem in corporate America today is the inability for people to admit their mistakes, and the lack of a culture that allows people to openly discuss the mistakes they made without fear of retribution, right? And you see way too much people sugarcoating things or sweeping problems under the rug versus saying, hey, I screwed up, I made a mistake, this is the impact, can you help me, right? And that's the type of culture that you need to and you want to build, so that we could win as a team, right? You're not going to win as a team if people are failing and nobody knows about it because they're hiding it because they're scared that they're going to get fired or they're going to get yelled at or they're going to get diminished in some way, shape, or form. So, we talk about the spectrum of corporate behavior, passive aggressive being on one end, aggressive being on the other end, and the right behavior being in the middle, which is assertive, which means you ask leading questions to draw people to their own conclusions, versus aggressive, which you just tell them, hey, you're an idiot, that's not right. Okay, that approach, might be effective sometimes, probably not most of the times. Or you say, oh, yay, Dominic, you're a genius. And then I walk out of the room and you say, gee, that guy's an idiot. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, right? So being assertive takes more time. But this is one of the problems that I see in the tech industry and large corporations overall, is the inability to create that culture where people feel comfortable openly discussing their mistakes without fear of retribution.
Yeah. God, I have so many more questions we didn't get to. Well, I just so appreciate your insights. We didn't even talk about the 3 Ds of leadership. There's so much left to uncover. Maybe that'll be the next thing. We didn't even talk about, you recently, helped co-author a book for women and diversity and technology. You do so much there. So we'll have to just, pick this up some other time. But Dom, the Dom father, he strikes again. Thank you so much for being here. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your leadership, your inspiration, just your general disposition about life and building teams. So thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, and thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Sabrina. Life is good. Look forward to speaking with you again.
Life is good. All right. See you soon.
Cheers. Bye-bye.